Did you hear what I was saying, Lane?
No, sir, I didn't think it polite to listen.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anybody can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression.
Yes, sir.
Have you got the cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I saw in your book that on Thursday evening, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing dined with us, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir, 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that in a bachelor's home the servants invariably drink the champagne?
Well,
I merely
sir-
ask for information.
Well, sir, I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine. In my experience in married households, the champagne is rarely first rate.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
Actually, sir, I believe it to be a very pleasant state. I have not much experience in it myself, as I've only been married once. But that was just consequence of a misunderstanding between me and a young person.
I am not much interested in your family life, Lane.
It's not a very interesting subject, sir. I rarely think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Why is it that the lower class has absolutely no sense of moral responsibility?
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating, as usual, I see.
I believe it is customary to have some slight refreshment around 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one entertains oneself. And when in the country, one entertains others. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Neighbors.
Have you got good neighbors in your part in Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
How mentally you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Why the cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta. And Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
My dear fellow, I do not think Aunt Augusta will approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way she flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come to town with the express purpose of proposing to her.
I thought you said you came to town on pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are, Algernon.
Don't! They are for Aunt Augusta.
But you're eating them the entire time.
That is an entirely different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too, my friend.
My dear fellow, you act as if you are already married. You are not, and I do not think you ever will be.
Now why do you say that?
I don't give my consent.
Your consent!
Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you must answer the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily. I know nobody of the name of Cecily. What do you mean by Cecily?
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Ernest Worthing last left with us when he dined here.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case this entire time? I wish to goodness you would have told me sooner. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it, and I almost offered a large reward.
I wish you would. I happen to need it.
Oh, there's no use offering a reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, but it does not matter, for the thing isn't yours at all.
What do you mean? You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right to read what's written inscribed. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to do to read a private cigarette case.
And it is absurd to have hard and fast rules about what one should read and what one shouldn't. Half of modern culture depends entirely on what is unsaid.
I'm well aware of the fact, and I don't propose we talk about modern culture. It is not something one should discuss in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
But it isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case was a present from somebody named, let's see here, Cecily. You said you didn't know anybody by the name of Cecily.
If you must know, Cecily is my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, perfectly charming old lady she is too. Now give it back.
But why does your aunt call herself Little? From Little Cecily with fondest love.
My dear friend, some ants are tall, and some ants are little, and aunt should be able to decide that for herself. Now give it here.
Yes, but why does your little Aunt Cecily call you her uncle? From little Cecily, with fondest love, to dear Uncle Jack. Your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You told me your name was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You respond to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I know.
My name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but why does your little Aunt Cecily call you her uncle? Get this out at once, old boy.
My dear Halsey, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's a very vulgar thing to do, to talk as a dentist when one isn't a dentist.
Oh, tell me the whole thing. I've always suspected you of being a secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What do you mean, Bunburyist?
I'll tell you what Bunburyist means when you tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Produce my cigarette case first.
Now produce your
It's
explanation.
a very simple explanation, my friend. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a boy, put me in his will as guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew, who addresses me as her uncle out of motives of pure respect, something I don't expect you to understand. She lives in my house in the country, under the care of her admirable governess and valued companion, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited, and I can tell you it's not in Shropshire.
My dear boy, I've already suspected that. I've Bunburied all over Shropshire. Now tell me, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
I'm not sure that you'll be able to understand my true motives, as you are hardly serious enough. But when one is placed in a position of guardian, they must adopt a high moral attitude on all subjects. Therefore, I have always pretended to have a younger brother that lives in the town and gets in many dreadful scrapes, so I must visit him often. So, that is the entire truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be a very tedious thing if it were either.
And that wouldn't be a bad thing either, now would it?
What you really are is a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What do you mean, Bunburyist?
You have invented yourself a very useful younger brother by the name of Ernest so that you may escape up to town whenever you please. I have invented myself a very useful invalid by the name of Bunbury so I may escape down to the country whenever I please. And now I may dine with you tonight.
I haven't asked you to dine anywhere with me tonight.
You're very careless about sending out your invitations. It is quite foolish of you.
You would much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the slightest intention of doing so. And besides, now that I know you are a Bunburyist, I want to talk to you about Bunburying.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my younger brother. And I rather think I should do so in any case, as Cecily is much too interested in him. And I strongly suggest that you do the same with your the one with the absurd name.
Nothing will ever make me part with Bunbury, and if you get married to Gwendolyn, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury.
If I get married to Gwendolyn, I won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will.
Oh.
Besides, it is hard to know anything nowadays. Oh, that must be Aunt Augusta. Now, if I get her away for 10 minutes so that you may propose to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight?
Yes, I suppose so.
Yes.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon. I hope you're behaving well, Algernon.
I'm feeling very well.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart, am I not, Mr. Worthing?
Quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not black. It would leave no room for developments. I plan on developing in many directions. I'm sorry if we're a little late, Algernon. I checked in on Lady Harbury. I've never seen a woman so altered after her husband's death. She looks 20 years younger. And now we'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mother, but I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
Well, there were no cucumbers at the market today, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers!
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, at the lack of cucumbers.
It makes no matter. I had crumpets with Lady Harbury.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause? I, of course, cannot say. Thank you.
Here you are.
Dinner tonight will be a treat.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I cannot dine with you tonight after all.
I should hope not. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is used to that.
It is a great disappointment to me, but I've just received a telegram that my poor friend Bunbury has fallen very ill again. The doctors seem to think I should be with him.
It's very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think that it is high time this Mr. Bunbury decided whether he was going to live or die. Please ask Mr. Bunbury to not have a relapse this Saturday, as I require you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception of the season.
I'll speak to Bunbury, if he is still conscious. I can almost promise you he'll be all right by Saturday.
Thank you. Come, Gwendolyn.
Certainly.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, do not talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain it means something else entirely, and that makes me so nervous.
Oh, but I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
I would like to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mother has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
The fact is, Miss Fairfax, ever since I've met you, I've admired you. More than any girl. Since I've met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact, and I often wish that in public you had been more demonstrative. You see, for me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent from you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals, and my ideal has always been to love someone by the name of Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. When Algernon first mentioned to me he had a friend named Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Darling, you really love me?
Passionately.
You don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But, of course, you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name weren't Ernest?
But it is Ernest.
Yes, I know. But say it was something else, something different. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little relevance at all to the real facts of life as we know them.
To speak quite candidly, darling, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has music of its own.
I think there are plenty of much nicer names out there. Jack, for instance, I find a very charming name.
Jack? Oh, no, there's very little music in the name of Jack. If any at all, it does not thrill. The only real safe name is Ernest.
I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once, darling.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, I love you, and you led me to believe you weren't entirely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me. This subject of marriage hasn't been touched on. There's been no talk of it.
May I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, Mr. Worthing, and to spare you any doubt on the subject, I shall tell you beforehand that I will accept you.
Oh, darling.
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say.
Yes, but you don't say it!
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it? I fear you have had no practice on the subject.
Practice, but darling, you're the only one I've ever loved.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from that posture at once!
Mother, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing hasn't finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
Mr. Worthing and I are engaged, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. And if you do become engaged to someone, I or your father will inform you of the fact. It is hardly a matter you can arrange for yourself. Mr. Worthing, I have a few questions for you. Gwendolyn, you will wait for me in the carriage.
But, Mother...
In the carriage, Gwendolyn.
Darling, please don't leave me here.
Gwendolyn, the carriage! You may take a seat.
I think I'd much rather stand at this point. Thank you.
I must tell you, you are not on my list of eligible young men. However, you could be. Tell me, how old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married. I believe that a man should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
Investments, chiefly. I have some land in the country with a house around 1,500 acres.
Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, seems unfortunate. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father?
I am afraid I don't know who I am by birth. When I said I had lost my parents, it would be nearer to the truth to say my parents had lost me. You see, I was found.
Found?
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an elderly man of a kind and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name Worthing because he had a first-class ticket to the town of Worthing in his pocket. Worthing is a place in Sussex.
Where did he find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, a large black leather handbag with handles. A rather ordinary handbag, in fact.
And where did he find this ordinary handbag?
It was given to him in mistake for his own in the cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
To be born in a handbag, Mr. Worthing, whether it had handles or not, is bewildering.
What would you propose I do, Lady Bracknell? I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to acquire a parent.
I don't know how I could manage to do that. But I could very easily produce the handbag as it is in my cloakroom at home. And I rather think that should satisfy you.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can't possibly think the Lord Bracknell would allow our only daughter, a girl raised with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning! For goodness sakes, don't hum that tune. How idiotic are you?
Well, didn't it go all right? Did Gwendolyn refuse you?
No, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged to be married. Her mother, on the other hand, is quite the Gorgon. Now, I don't quite know what a Gorgon is, but I'm sure she is one.
Did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
One doesn't tell the truth to nice, sweet, innocent girls like that.
But what of your younger brother? What will become of Ernest?
I'll say he died. In Paris. Of a stroke.
You had better say severe chill.
Severe chill could be hereditary.
Less hereditary than a stroke.
Fine. He carried off in Paris of a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But didn't you say little Cecily was greatly interested in him? Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, no, she's not some silly romantic girl. She's got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays no attention to her studies.
I would very much like to see Cecily.
I will take great care that you never do. She's excessively pretty and only 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn you have an excessively pretty ward who is only 18?
One doesn't just blurt those things out either. And besides, I'm sure they're destined to be great friends. I'll make a wager with you, old boy, that a half hour after they've met each other, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after calling each other a lot of other things.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn!
Algernon, I must ask you kindly to turn round. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
I really don't think I can allow this, Gwendolyn.
Algernon, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life, and you are not quite old enough to do so.
Darling.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I fear we may never be married. By the look on Mother's face, we might never be. And although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can do can change my devotion to you.
Darling.
Your romantic origin, related to me and my mother, has naturally stirred my curiosity. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is yours in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
It may be necessary to do something drastic, and that will take serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algernon, you may turn round now.
Thank you.
You may also ring the bell.
May I see you out, Miss Fairfax?
Certainly.
I will be seeing Miss Fairfax out.
What have you got for me here, Lane? Oh, dear Bills. A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
You may put all my dress clothes and the Bunbury suits up with the others.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Now there is a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I've loved in my... What on earth is so amusing?
I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that is all.
If you're not careful, my friend, your friend Bunbury will get you in a serious scrape one day.
I love scrapes. They're the only thing that's never serious.
Nonsense! You're always talking nonsense.
Cecily, Cecily, your German grammar is on the table. Please come up to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, your guardian has asked that you study your German as he was leaving for town yesterday afternoon.
Well, dear Uncle Jack, he's so very serious, sometimes I wonder if he can't be quite well.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. You must remember your uncle's anxiety over that brother of his.
Well, I wish you would let us see him, Miss Prism. We might be good for him.
I doubt it. As a man sows, so he reaps. Cecily, you must put away that silly diary of yours. I truly don't see why you insist on keeping one at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter all of the lovely secrets of my life. If I don't write them down, I may forget them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we carry with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles things that haven't happened and couldn't quite possibly have happened.
To your work.
Oh, but I see Dr. Chasuble coming up to the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, it is indeed a pleasure.
Miss Prism, I trust you're well.
Actually, Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache, and I think it would do her quite well to take a stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything of a headache.
Oh, yes, but I felt instinctively that you had one. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not the German lesson when the rector came in.
Oh, Cecily, I hope you're not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically, of course. I drew my metaphor from bees. Mr. Worthing has not returned from town.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
It seems he's not one of those whose sole aim in life is pleasure, as is that unfortunate man his brother seems to be. But I shall not disturb you and your pupil any longer. I shall see you both, no doubt, at even Sunday.
Oh, Dr. Chasuble, I think I will have that stroll with you after all. I find I do have a headache and a walk might suit it well.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. And Cecily, you will study your political economy in my absence.
Horrid political economy.
Oh, Cecily, I must inform you there's a man waiting inside. It seems he wishes to speak with you.
Send him out, please.
Will do.
I've never met a wicked person before. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. Oh, he does.
You must be my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
Here.
I am your brother, or your cousin Ernest.
You were under some strange mistake. I'm not little. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you must be my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm really not that wicked, Cecily. You mustn't think of me as wicked.
Well, if you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all, pretending to be really good while being wicked all at the same time. That'd be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention it, I've been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that.
That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, Cecily.
Oh, I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself?
I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
First, I'd like a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
The Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Well, Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I'd care to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
Oh, Dr. Chasuble, you are too much alone. You ought to get married.
But is a man attractive when married?
No. No man is ever attractive when married. Well, except to his wife.
And often I've heard not even to her.
That depends entirely on the woman.
Oh, dear Miss Cecily.
Perhaps you followed us to the school.
Mr. Worthing,
Mr. Worthing?
we did not expect you till Monday afternoon.
Yes, I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I trust you are well.
Indeed. I trust this garb of woe does not befit some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest, dead.
Quite dead.
Huh. Well, what a lesson for him. I hope he profits from it.
You have my sincerest condolences, Mr. Worthing. At least you have the consolation of knowing that you were the most forgiving and generous of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is still a sad, sad blow.
Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris. I received a telegram from the manager of the Grand Hotel last night.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so he reaps.
Oh, charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? Well, that points to no serious state of mind at the last. I trust you would like me to make some slight allusion to this terrible affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of manna in the wilderness can be adapted to many occasions, joyful, or as is in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at confirmations, harvest celebrations, christenings, and days of humiliation.
You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen all right. I mean, you are continually christening, are you not?
It is one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish.
The fact is that I would like to get christened myself. Later this afternoon, if you've got nothing better to do.
At what hour would you wish the ceremony to take place?
Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably.
Uncle Jack, I'm pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them. Cecily!
My child, my child.
Why, Uncle Jack, you look as if you had toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother Ernest! He arrived about half an hour ago.
I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have treated you in the past, he is still your brother. I'll send him out.
These are very joyful tidings indeed.
And as we were all resigned to his loss,
My brother?
sudden return seems distressing.
Pardon me for interrupting you. My brother is in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd.
Brother Jack!
Good heavens!
Brother Jack, I have come all the way down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all of the trouble that I have caused you, and I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, are you going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful, and he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in all of us. Ernest has actually just been telling about his invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Oh, yes. He has been telling me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit most of the faults were on my side, but I must say I was expecting a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering this is my first time being here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I'll never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Fine. This is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two together.
I agree. And Cecily, you will come with us. Certainly, Miss Prism.
You have done a beautiful thing today, child.
Let us not be too premature in our judgments. I feel very happy.
Algernon, you scoundrel! You have got to get out of here! I don't allow any Bunburying here!
I've put Mr. Ernest's luggage in the room next to your own, sir.
Pardon me?
I've unpacked and put Mr. Ernest's luggage in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. Of course, I cannot stay for more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anybody call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures.
And I can quite understand why.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I do not like it.
Well, I do not like your clothes. Why on earth don't you go and change them?
You are certainly not staying here as a guest or anything else, let alone for an entire week.
I will not leave so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly, dear brother Jack.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you are not too long.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. Now, I hope you have a good trip back to town. This bun-burying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a wonderful success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go. Oh, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
No, he's going to send me away.
Oh, then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful part.
Yes, it is always painful to part from people we hardly know.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope I shall not offend you, Cecily, if I state quite frankly and openly that you are absolute perfection.
Oh, I love honesty, Ernest. I will copy your remarks into my diary. There, I reach absolute perfection. You can go on, I'm quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell him to come round next week at the exact same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he found out you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy. Of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months, but, my dear Cecily, how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first mentioned me he had a brother who was very wicked and bad, you've been in my conversations, and of course a man who's talked about is always very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February, I accepted you next to this old tree, and the next day I bought this pretty little ring in your name.
Did I give you this? It is very pretty, isn't it?
Oh, yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. Oh, and this is the box in which I keep all of your letters.
My letters, but my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
I know. I was forced to write them for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes more.
Oh, do let me read them.
I could not possibly. They'd make you conceited. Of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Oh, you mustn't laugh at me, darling. It has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. I pity any poor married woman whose husband isn't named Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
It is not at all a bad name, but, seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, could you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest, but I could not give you my attention.
Cecily, your rector is here. I must see him at once on a most important question. I mean, on most important business.
Oh?
I won't be gone for more than half an hour.
Oh, but couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just arrived to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
I thought Mr. Worthing was in his library.
Mr. Worthing was seen heading in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
You can send the lady out. I'm sure Uncle Jack will be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax?
Miss Fairfax.
I'm Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. I like you already more than I can say. I feel we are going to be great friends.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a short time.
I may call you Gwendolyn. I may call you Cecily, may I not?
If you wish.
My name is Gwendolyn. You will call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
Of course.
Then it's all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
This might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father's Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose?
No, I don't think so.
I thought so. In fact, I'm glad to say, outside the family circle, Papa is entirely unknown. That's right as it should be. The house seems to be the proper sphere for the man. You're here on a short visit, I suppose?
No, actually I live here.
Oh, your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
No, I have no mother.
Indeed.
Why, yes, my guardian looks after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Funny, he never mentioned to me he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting by the hour. Although, now knowing this, I must confess it doesn't fill me with a feeling of delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you since I met you. But now knowing this, I can't help but wish that you were older than you seem to be, and not so beautiful. Well, to speak quite candidly, Cecily, I wish you fully 42 and plain. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be impossible to him as deception. But even men of the most noblest standing are susceptible to the physical charms of others.
Excuse me, Gwendolyn, but did you say Ernest?
Well, yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing. It is his brother, his older brother.
He never mentioned to me he had a brother.
Oh, I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for quite some time.
That accounts for it. Cecily, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was almost growing anxious. It would be terrible if a cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? But you are quite sure it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. Oh, in fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Why, yes, Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
There must be some mistake, for he proposed to me yesterday. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
Well, Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Very curious, for he proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, please do so. I never go anywhere without my diary. One should always have something interesting to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it's any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior plan.
I'm sorry, Gwendolyn, but Ernest proposed to me.
If the man has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to free him, and at once, with a firm hand. You, Miss Cardew, are presumptuous. In times like this, it becomes more than one's moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say I have never seen a spade. It is clear our social spheres are widely different.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of the hills, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I would like that. I hate crowds.
Oh, is that why you live in town?
What a well-kept garden you have here, Miss Cardew.
I'm so glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I didn't know there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Honestly, I don't know how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody, who is anybody, does. It always bores me to death.
Ah, may I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, detestable girl. I require tea.
Of course, Miss Fairfax.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar isn't fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my nature and the sweetness of my disposition. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
I will have my Ernest.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. I am always invariably right. Ernest, my own Ernest.
Darling.
A moment. May I ask if you're engaged to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. Now, what could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you.
Gwendolyn, you must be under some strange mistake. This is my Uncle Jack.
I beg your pardon?
Why, yes, this is Jack.
Jack?
Oh, and here's Ernest.
Cecily!
A moment, darling. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
What the good heavens! Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn.
No, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you.
I thought there must be some mistake. That gentleman is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny
Oh,
Is your name really Jack?
I could deny it. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name most certainly is Jack, and it has been Jack for years.
My poor wounded Cecily.
my sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
Of course.
Mr. Worthy, there is something we would like to ask you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to your brother Ernest. It would mean something to us to know where he is at present.
It's very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. As it is the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a position. But the truth is that I have no brother. That I have never had a brother. And I certainly am never going to have a brother of any kind.
No brother?
None.
None of any kind?
None of any kind.
It is clear neither of us is engaged to anyone.
How unpleasant.
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture after us there.
Men.
This ghastly state of things is what you call bun burying, I suppose.
Yes! And a perfectly wonderful bunbury it is. The most wonderful bunbury I've had in all my life.
Well, you've no right to bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious bunburyist knows that.
Serious bunburyist. Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about bunburying.
The only small satisfaction I have in this entire ordeal is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to make as many trips out to the country as you used to do, my dear friend, and a good thing, too.
Your brother's looking a little off color, isn't he? You won't be able to escape up to town as often as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing, either.
And as for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, you're taking in a sweet, a simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. And to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Gwendolyn is my first cousin.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I want to be engaged to her. That is all.
Well, I simply want to be married to Cecily. I adore her.
There is no chance of that happening. Now, how can you sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this ghastly state? You seem to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I cannot eat muffins in an agitated manner. Calm is the only way to eat them.
I think it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all.
When I'm in trouble, food is the only thing that consoles me.
Algernon.
Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
I wish to goodness you would go.
Asking me to leave without any form of dinner is perfectly absurd. And besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
The sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to get christened 5:30 under the name of Ernest, as Gwendolyn would wish. We can't both be christened Ernest. That's utterly absurd. And besides, you've been christened already.
Yes, but not for years.
But you've been christened. That's the important part.
Yes, so I know my constitution can handle it.
Nonsense. You are always talking nonsense.
Jack, you ate the muffins again! I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left, and I'm particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate the tea cake.
Then why on earth do you allow the tea cake to be served up to your guests?
Algernon, I have already told you to go.
Why don't you go? I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And there's still one unfinished muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to show they have some sense of shame left.
They've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't even seem to notice us. Couldn't you cough?
Oh, but I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us.
They're approaching.
Let us remain in dignified silence.
Certainly. This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect. Yes, it does.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing! There is something I must ask you. Much relies on your answer.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is perfect. Mr. Moncrief, why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I may have a chance of meeting you.
How satisfactory.
Yes, dear, if you believe him.
I don't. It's still a beautiful answer, though.
True, I had forgotten. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer for pretending to have a brother? Was it so you could come up and see me as much as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Their answer seems to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing. It seems to have the stamp of truth upon it.
Yes, it quite does.
So you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True, there are principles at stake. One cannot surrender. Which of us should be the one to tell them?
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time with me?
Of course. Your Christian names are still a barrier, and that is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we're going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
And you as well?
Yes.
When it comes to self-sacrifice, men are beyond us.
We are.
Darling.
Darling.
Excuse me. Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mother.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Mr. Worthing, you must stop all communication with my daughter.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards to Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
is this the house where your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh no, Bunbury doesn't live here. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
When did he die? His death must have been quite sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, he was quite exploded.
Oh,
Exploded? Was he a victim of war?
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean, he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live. That is what I mean. So, Bunbury died.
He finally made up his mind. Now that we have gotten rid of this Mr. Bunbury, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person with my nephew?
this lady is Miss Cecily Cardew.
Cecily and Algernon are engaged, Mother.
Pardon me?
We are engaged to be married, Aunt Augusta.
Is there something in the air? There seems to be an awful lot of engagements going on here. Who are you?
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew.
That sounds unsatisfactory. What proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides, and you will be pleased to hear that I have also in my possession records of her birth, baptism, registration, confirmation, and vaccine for both English and German flag reasons.
Oh, a life crowded with incident. Gwendolyn, time for our departure.
Sorry to hear that. So
As a
great
matter
to see
for Mr. Worthing, I must ask, has Miss Cardew any fortune?
only around 130,000 pounds in the funds. So great to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. Miss Cardew seems to be a most attractive young lady now that I look at her.
Yes, now.
Kindly turn round, sweet child. No, the side view is what I want. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily has social possibilities.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care twopence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. My dear child, of course you must know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. Oh, well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
You may call me Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Why, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I'm not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity to find out each other's character before marriage, which is never advisable.
I hate to interrupt you, Lady Bracknell, but it is only fair to tell you that Miss Cardew cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. And that consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds?
It pains me to have to speak frankly to you about your nephew, but I simply do not approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible.
I'm afraid there can be no doubt upon the subject. This afternoon, when I was in London on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house under the false pretense of being my brother. He then succeeded in the course of the afternoon to gain the affections of my only ward. He then stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. But what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he has known from the very beginning that I have no brother, that I have never had a brother, and I certainly am never going to have a brother of any kind, because I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, I've decided to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is very gracious of you, Lady Bracknell. However, my own decision remains unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. Tell me, dear, how old are you?
Well, I am 18, but I always admit to 20 when going to evening parties.
Indeed, no woman should ever be accurate about her age. Well, I think your guardian's consent is no matter of importance.
I hate to interrupt you once more, but it is again only fair to tell you that, according to her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come of age until she is 35.
Algernon, could you wait for her till she were 35?
Well, of course I could.
Well, yes, but I couldn't.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
Well, I don't know.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states, she simply cannot wait until she is 35, which displays a somewhat impatient nature. I beg of you to reconsider.
Ah, but Lady Bracknell, the decision is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will gladly allow your nephew, however untruthful, to form an alliance with my ward.
That is out of the question.
Mother.
Then a passionate celibacy is all any of us have to look forward to.
That is not the future I see for my daughter. Come, Gwendolen, we must leave.
Everything is prepared for the christening.
Oh.
The christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both of these gentlemen have expressed a desire to be christened this evening.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid it.
Am I to understand then, Mr. Worthing, that there would be no christenings this afternoon?
As things stand now, I don't think they would be of much practical use to either of us, my friend.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing, although I have just been informed that Miss Prism is waiting for me in the vestry.
Oh, delightful.
Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes.
Allow me to detain you for a moment. This may prove to be a matter of some importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female connected with education?
She's the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
And may I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism has been, for the last 3 years, Miss Cardew's valued companion and esteemed governess.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
Oh, it seems she's here now.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon.
Prism!
Oh, dear.
Come here, Prism! Prism! Where is that baby?
28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house number 104 with a baby boy. The police found a buggy with a manuscript, but no baby. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, it's a pleasure to see you again. You see, I am ashamed, but I do not know. You see, I only wish I knew. Well, on the morning of that day you mentioned, I had planned as usual to take the baby out in the buggy, but I had also with me some manuscripts in which I was going to place into a handbag. You see, I will never forgive myself, but I placed the manuscripts in the buggy and the baby in the handbag. In a handbag!
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Don't ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, I insist on knowing where you deposit the handbag that contained that infant.
In the cloakroom of a railway station.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Bright Line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
You're not too long, I'll wait for you all my life.
What do you believe all this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even say. In families of high standing, coincidences do not occur.
Jack seems agitated.
He has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant.
Oh, it seems it stopped.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you answer. The happiness of more than one life depends upon it.
Yes, I mean, it appears to be mine. Yes, see, here on the lining, it's a stain caused by a beverage. That must be. Yes, on the lock here, my initials. The bag is undoubtedly mine, and I'm quite happy to have it back.
More is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes. Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I cannot deny that that is a serious blow. But who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is a slight misunderstanding. You see, there is the one who can tell you who you truly are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly inform me as to who I am?
I'm afraid the news I have for you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother! Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? I've always said that I had a brother! Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother! Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. You're going to have to treat me with more respect from now on. You've never treated me as a brother a day in your life.
Not till today, old boy, I admit.
My own one, but what one are you now that you've become someone else?
I had quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I only changed my affections.
How noble, Gwendolyn.
Lady Bracknell, at the time that I was placed in that handbag by Miss Prism, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, was lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened. That is settled. Now what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Well, yes, of course. But what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one.
Algernon, can't you remember what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, he died before I was a year old.
They would appear in the armulus of the period, yes?
Yes, I suppose.
I actually have them here. Not this one, not this one, not that one. Here. M. Generals. Malum, Maxbone, Maglin. What ghastly names they have. Markbeat, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, General, 1869. Christian names. Ernest, John. I've always said my name was Ernest, but it's naturally Ernest.
Now I remember that's what the general was called. I know I had a reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest, I felt you could have no other name.
Darling, It is a painful thing for a man to learn that he has been telling nothing but the truth his entire life. Could you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
Darling.
Letitia.
Frederick,
Cecily, alas!
my nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I finally realized the vital importance of being earnest.